Hello friends, hope you are aware of the recent tension raised in the Middle East. Yes, this is about the recent development between Israel and Palestine. The militant group of Palestine, Hamas, has fired thousands of rockets towards Israel. However, Israel is able to survive because of its Iron Dome. If you want to understand today's crisis, then we have to know the history first. So this is why in this video, we are going to understand the history between two countries. How did the country Israel came to be? And how did the conflict between two countries begin?
Israelite king Solomon built a temple in Jerusalem for Jewish people. Then it was destroyed by Romans. Jewish people then fled in large numbers during these centuries.
Now the actual story begins.
You must have heard about how terribly Hitler had treated the Jews. It's said that Jesus Christ was born into a Jewish family, and some Christians believe that some Jews wanted to crucify Jesus Christ. So Christians killed the Jews in large numbers. After 1800s, the hate towards the Jews continued. They feel that if they wanted to live peacefully, then they would need to create their own country. In 1881, Jews started migrating. They moved to Palestine area. Jews built many permanent settlements and started living there. Remember, that time there was no Israel, Gaza Strip or the West Bank. The whole area was Palestine.
Why did they choose Palestine area? Because this was a very holy place for them. Jerusalem is the holiest place for the Jews.
Now the time of Ottoman Empire. Under the Ottoman Empire, Christians, Muslims and Jews lived together peacefully because population was very little and most of the land was empty. Next, forward to World War I. British, French and Arab revolutionaries were fighting the Ottoman Empire. British played cleverly. They tell the Arab revolutionaries if they support in defeating the Ottoman Empire, they will give them the Palestine area. And also they told the same thing to Jews. They said that if you help in defeating Arab revolutionaries, they will give the Palestine area to form their own country for Jews. They also made a secret deal between French. As per the plan, Ottoman Empire fell down. British and France divided the Middle East area between themselves. British took over control of the Palestine region. Hitler gets political power. Again, Jews murdered in millions. The Jews sheltered from Hitler-controlled Europe to different countries to save themselves. Some get refugee in America.
At the same time, around 1940s, Palestine's nationalist movement was also beginning. And the Palestinians were also demanding for their own country.
In 1947, the United Nations Partition Plan is released. In the plan, the United Nations keeps 57% of the area for the Jewish country and 43% of the area for Arab Palestine country. Jerusalem is very historical, important area for three religions, for the Jews, Christians and Muslims. So the United Nations decided that Jerusalem would be under international control. The Jews accept this plan and name their country Israel. Here, the Israel country is born in 1948. But unfortunately, the other neighboring Arab countries weren't pleased with this plan at all. They believe that the plan was basically the Britishers' way of continuing their colonization.
The first Arab-Israeli war began in 1948, saying that they will not allow any Jews to take the part of the land.
This is a very historic war. More than 5 countries were fighting against a tiny new country. The Jews living in Israel knew that how the world treated them. So if they wanted to survive, then they have to fight. Surprisingly, Israel won the war, defeating all other countries. According to UN partition plan, Israel occupied several of these areas. The Gaza Strip went to Egypt and West Bank went to Jordan. Palestinians did not have any country any longer and become refugees in Arab countries.
After this, The Second Arab-Israeli War takes place in 1967 for 6 days.
Not only does Israel occupy the Gaza Strip and the West Bank area, but also the large Egyptian peninsula get occupied by Israel. After this war, want their own country for this reason. In 1964, Palestine Liberation Organization (PLO) was founded. Their aim is through armed struggle to use weapons to get their own country in the beginning. They also wanted the Israel should end to exist. Because of this, the USA and Israel declared it to be a terror.
From the perspective of another, their protesters want the freedom of their country.
In 1974, PLO gets officially recognized by United Nations General Assembly to be representative of Palestine people. In 1979, the peace talks between Egypt and Israel is successful. The Egypt becomes the first Arab country to recognize Israel as a country that exists there. After the peace talks, the entire Egyptian peninsula area is captured by Israel is returned to Egypt by Israel.
From 1967 to 1980s, it has been more than 10 years since Israel has occupied Gaza Strip and West Bank. Many of Israeli people had started forming their colonies in the West Bank and started building their settlements. Israeli government supported them directly or indirectly.
1992, Israel gets an amazing prime minister. His name was Yitzhak Rabin. He said that PLO is not a terrorist organization. Here, the 1993 Oslo Accords take place for the first time. Both of them come together and talk about how the country can be correctly and peacefully divided, about how the Palestine country can be created. As a result, in 1994, the Palestinian government is established for the first time. It is named the Palestine National Authority. At this point in time, Israelis had already established permanent settlements in many West Bank areas, which were supported by the Israeli government, and the Palestinians were living in few areas in bits and pieces.
Then it was decided to divide West Bank in 3 parts.
Area B, Area A, and Area C. Area A would be where the Palestine government would be in control. In Area B, both of the government will exercise control, and Area C will be the areas where the Israeli government will retain control. Palestine gets only some bits and pieces in West Bank area and Gaza Strip to form their country. Israel and Palestine were very close to come up with a peaceful solution. President of Palestine Authority, Yasser Arafat, and the Prime Minister of Israel, Yitzhak Rabin, were awarded Nobel Peace Prize. But unfortunately, Jewish people assassinate their Prime Minister.
However, Israel's settlement in the West Bank and the state of Jerusalem continued and resolved, and both Israel and Palestine viewed Jerusalem future capital.
In 2002, the Palestinian and militant group launched first major suicide attack, killing at least 30 Israelis. Israel conducted an operation to took control of much of the West Bank. Israel starts building walls around its settlement and checkpoints. Now it's difficult for Palestine to live there. 2006, Hamas.
Around 5-6 years before, some Islamic fanatics came together in Palestine and formed Hamas group.
Militant group runs a Palestine election and wins against PLO and Fatah. But in 2007, these two parties start fighting internally. Battle of Gaza and Palestine is divided into 2 parts. In Gaza Strip, Hamas established its control, and in West Bank, area is controlled by Fatah and PLO. Fatah is non-violent group and administrated like active government. The Hamas area of Gaza Strip is ruled like a terrorist area. Now coming to the actual situation, where we see rocket has been launched against Israel is from Gaza Strip area. However, there is absolute peace in West Bank area.
This current development is due to colonization in Israel in the West Bank area. So, friends, is there any peaceful solution for Israel-Palestine conflict?
If you see the map of Palestine in West Bank area, the country is divided into so many pieces which will be difficult to rule as an independent nation. There is also some suggestion that a two-state solution can be possible, that the area shall be divided as per the partition of 1967 or United Partition Plan of 1947. If Israel and Palestine is divided into two parts as per the above suggestion, the question arises of status of permanent settlements, colonies of Israel in West Bank area.
This is an answer and there is no clarity at the same.